Good afternoon. I hope this weekly e-news finds you well. I wanted to share with you an interesting phone call that I was a part of yesterday, actually a Zoom call with the Minnesota Conference, United Church of Christ. They put on a call called the Small Church Collective, and it is getting clergy and lay leaders together who are serving small congregations, all in one Zoom call to talk about what's going on in our respective church communities. Now, a small church, you might be thinking, are we that small? Yeah, we are a small congregation, and we're not alone. 71% of the congregations, UCC congregations in the Minnesota Conference, are worshiping with 50 or fewer in attendance. 71%, 50 and fewer in attendance. We're one of them. And we also are a small and mighty crew that have lots of things to do. And that was also shared in the course of this conversation with or by Patrick Dugan, who is the Executive Director of Church Building and Loan. And he spoke to us at this Small Church Collective. And some of you might, Church Building and Loan might sound familiar to you. It works with Partners in Vision, and Partners in Vision was the organization that helped us work with and develop our mission priorities, which we did last fall. One of the things that Mr. Dugan said, though, was that all churches are in transition right now. And I couldn't agree with him more. We're feeling it here. Not everybody's coming back to worship or trying to figure out who's volunteering to do what. How do our finances look? How do we want to take steps to be connector and connective tissue within our neighborhood on the east side of St. Paul? There's lots of things in the air. And then we're starting to feel the political climate start wrapping up a little bit or winding up a little bit, especially with the presidential election coming down the road. We're starting to feel it. And it also tends to be a little bit scary. What's going to happen? And how then does church fit into all of this, recognizing that our church looks very different now than it did a month ago, a year ago, 3 years ago, pre-pandemic, 5 years ago? I've been with you for 14 and a half years, and we have been through quite a bit. And now we are finding ourselves in another cycle in which there's some uncertainty. And when there is this moment of uncertainty, we tend to lean into fear, and we tend to look at numbers, and we tend to wonder, oh my gosh, how are we gonna do this? And there are days when I feel it too. Actually, this week is one of those weeks. How are we going to do this? And then what always brings me back is scripture. Darn you, Jesus, you always manage to bring it home, because in the scripture text for this week, in the Gospel of John, chapter 14, we're kind of hanging out in that farewell discourse of Jesus. Jesus is talking about maintaining that commandment to love. And that in the midst of that love, we will find peace. Peace I give you, my peace I give to you. I do not give as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. I need to lean into those words. For as when Jesus shared those words with his disciples, it was a scary time. People didn't know what was going to happen. His ministry was starting to come to a close. You could tell that those around him, the empire around him, wasn't too happy with him. And so he wanted to instill the embodiment of love shared through his words and his ministry, through table fellowship, through communion. And so then when we think about our work here at Hazel Park Church, how do we continue to be the embodiment of Christ? How do we continue to be the messengers of love for a community that still needs to be loved? We've been in the East Side community. It's going to be 128 years in October, and there is still a lot of love to share. So as I'm mindful of what Patrick Dugan said about all churches in transition, yep, we are in transition, and we have focus. We have 4 mission priorities about community outreach, faith formation and spiritual formation, children, youth, and young adults, and seniors. We know that there are 4 areas that matter, and we're doing something in each of those 4 areas, especially in this first year of living out this plan. As we continue to figure out ways in which we do ministry together, we know that there's only so much capacity, right? We all know that our time matters, that it's hard to volunteer, and yet is there something that gives you passion? Is there something that you think is interesting? So as we think about, as we live into this new world of doing church, how do we collaborate with the folks that are in our building? How do we continue to build relationships with our collaborators with Eastern Heights Elementary School and Every Meal? How do we continue to do work with Northeast Seniors for Better Living? How do we continue to work with Hazel Park Learning Center? These are all organizations right here in our building and in our neighborhood that we can continue to foster, develop, lean into, and also feed our passion to living out our mission priorities. And I know there's only so much time in a day. So my friends, as we continue to do this work that is kind of topsy-turvy, don't know which end is up, we're also mindful that there's love to share. And our church can be the biggest asset of sharing that love by doing this work, and to know that when we pool our resources together, we are so much better together than we are apart. So on this lengthy e-news today, sorry, it was a rambling. As I said to Kristen, I'm like, Kristen, there's a lot going on in the world, and there's lots going on in my head, and I know many of you are feeling it because of the comments that you'll make to me. So let's face this fear together with love. Let's face this fear knowing that, yeah, it's probably gonna be a little sticky sometimes. We might even get a little cranky with one another as we're trying to figure out our next steps. And this isn't the first time we've been here before. In 2009, when it was my first part of my first year being here, was our first building, our first capital campaign. There was lots of unsettledness there. When we had all kinds of sewage in our kitchen, a few years later, there was all kinds of unsettledness there. Then we have a pandemic. Oh my goodness, there's more unsettledness. And yet, what was the grounding? Love. It continues to be the driving force. So here's your sermon for the week, my friends. I hope that you're having a good week, and I hope that you can channel all the things that we're feeling in our world into a direction that is filled with love and hope, so that can drive us into the next steps for our future as a congregation and as we continue to do this work together as a faith community. I hope you have a great rest of the week, and I look forward to seeing you on Sunday.